Hello, and welcome to The Bits with Joe and Nick. We are recording some podcasts pretty close together here because me and Nick have decided that we want to kind of get back into a regular schedule of things, even though there is no regular schedule. I think both of us are leaving for Essen next week, and then PAX Unplugged is shortly afterwards. But we're trying to make a little bit more time to get a couple more episodes of the podcast out there and recorded. But I'm Joe from Allplay Games.
And I'm Nick from Bitewing Games. Yeah, and if we didn't record this today, it would not happen in October, so...
That's absolutely true. There's a lot of busyness going on from both of us, but I think you've got some pretty big personal changes coming up in your life as well as work and everything else like that.
Right. Yeah, I'll be moving out of state. So yeah, it's and that happens right after Essen, so it's going to be a hectic month.
Absolutely. We should just jump right in because today we have an episode that I'm actually quite excited about. We are kind of going through what types of topics that we had kind of on the docket that we wanted to cover. And one of the ideas that we had occurred to us is we have a lot of people that are listening to this podcast pretty regularly and are aspiring publishers or game designers or people that are just genuinely interested in the more minutia of the board game industry from a publishing perspective. And we thought we might want to put out there to the audience, do you have any questions for us that we can answer? So today is going to be kind of a... short fire or rapid fire Q&A going through some of the questions that were posted to us in different forums and in the comments of the YouTube video.
Absolutely. So we've assembled quite the list of questions. Thank you everyone for submitting those. And we're going to try to get through as many as we can today. If we don't get to your question, it's probably either because we are planning to answer a similar question or we just don't have enough time to get to it and we're going to save it for a future episode. So do we just want to jump into the first question at the top of the list, Joe?
Let's do it.
Okay. So first one comes from Crewmeister, and he asks, how do you deal with poor reception of your game? Obviously, Allplay, and before that, even BoardGameTables.com. How many total games have you guys released at this point?
I did the math on that. It is at 74.
That's awesome.
As of this recording.
Yeah, you guys are very productive over there, very busy, never a dull moment. And obviously, they're not going to all be received in the same way. Some are going to be huge hits, and others will be, hopefully at least hidden gems, and then others maybe people just don't like it and it doesn't connect, right? Eventually, you're gonna have some, I guess, slow sellers. So how do you deal with that?
So one of the things is if you have a wide enough distribution channel and you have deep enough sales channels within those, you can pretty much guarantee a minimum sales within a certain amount of time. That being said, some reception can, negate that, right? But a lot of this is based on like developing robust sales channels and printing to meet the need of those with enough overages that you can actually predict spikes and reprint without actually having to run out of stock, which is something that we try to do. That's like kind of one of the main focuses that I've had over the last couple of years. And it's a difficult place for a lot of board game companies to get there. A lot of board game companies print a board game and put it into distribution and see what happens. And that's the way a lot of the industry functions. That being said, we do have some titles that are much slower moving than others. And we might have, it's not selling very fast, and we might have at the sale rate like 3 to 4 years of stock just sitting in the warehouse, and that might only be like 2 pallets. So what do we do with games like that we're like, this isn't selling very much and we'd like to try to move it? Sometimes we will try to do like pretty low sales. We really only do sales twice a year at Allplay. We really don't believe in like discounting and selling our product like in liquidation models very often, because I think that devalues what we consider, whether they're received well or not, great games that people will find and identify with and like at some point. So we really limit the amount of times that we do like sales, but that is one method that we can use. But really, we don't try too hard at doing those like really robust liquidation things. And so that's just one of the factors that we just will sometimes just have stock. And I mean, it helps that we own our own warehouse and we're not paying storage fees on overage stocks. I mean, we're obviously paying for storage, but it's two of our own pallets. We don't pay ourselves storage fees. So we kind of have a little bit of an out that way, that if a game is going to take 3 years to sell off, it really doesn't matter that much to us. But Nick, you might come at it from a different perspective.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we have some games that, you release to the market and you find, okay, this isn't connecting with our audience like we hoped or thought it would. And like you said, I think your best chances are, finding reviewers who are most likely to enjoy that kind of game, and trying to keep people discovering the game or learning about it and such, especially for the intended target audience. Because if you feel like it's a good product, it's one thing if you release a product and you understand, like, hey, this has significant flaws to it, and anybody that's going to buy it is probably going to be unhappy. That's one problem, and that's one thing to overcome. But I think we're more talking about games that don't sell as well as you hope, and they're still solid products overall, but maybe they just don't have as big of an appeal. And I think sending it to more reviewers who specifically are interested in that kind of game would help. I don't think it helps to just blanket send it to as many reviewers as possible, especially if the reception hasn't been amazing, because it's just going to be more of the same kind of reception overall. You got to be very, I think, specific about who you send it to. And then, like you said, just running sales for those particular games. In our case, I think the biggest concern on our end is one, if we print too many copies to begin with. If you're not confident that a game's necessarily going to be a smash hit, then don't be printing extra copies to begin with, and you'll avoid that problem. But if you do end up with extra copies that they're eating into your funds because of warehouse fees, or you just need the cash flow, then I think your best option is to discount or try to sell off during a sale like our upcoming Black Friday sale, for example. But that doesn't mean that it's also a game that's on our Black Friday sale is a poor seller. We're planning to put a lot of games on Black Friday sale, and a lot of that is just like tariffs has sucked up a lot of our cash, and we could use more cash flow right now, even for our good sellers that we're putting on sale. So there's different reasons to put a game on sale for sure.
Yep. So let's jump into the next question here from Jacob. What do you look for in a game before starting to work on it? And I guess this really means like before signing it. Would be my best interpretation of like what that means, like before starting to work on it. Honestly, I'm looking for something that just like, to quote a famous home organizer, sparks joy, right? Like I don't know how else to describe it, right? I don't have this like, it really is kind of like a sixth sense, right? Of like, does this, when I play this, does this make me feel a certain ways? I have played some of the roughest prototypes of my life, like just paper on table, and like I'm like, this is really fascinating. And I have played some of the most beautiful, well-produced, amazing production copies of like prototypes that people have made, and I'm like, I don't know, I don't really feel it. Like I don't know what to tell you. It just really is kind of like looking for that spark.
That's a good way to put it. And I think on my end too, a lot of very small publishers, this isn't their main job. Maybe they have some other way of making a living. And so for me and those publishers, often we're spending a lot of our free time, essentially devoted to whatever project we're working on next. And I don't want to be burning my free time or my, time that I could spend on other hobbies working on a game that I don't love. And so exactly like you said, if it sparks joy, if it's something that I really fall in love with as a game and as a project and a concept, then that's going to get us to sign it. And that can vary a lot from game to game as far as what part of it sparks the joy. But I think a lot of it, at least for me, is dictated by my tastes, and that kind of fits into who our target audience is and stuff. So if a game's way outside of our wheelhouse, it's going to have to be really special for us to consider it. So,
all right, this one is from Chai Cube. I'm actually kind of curious about the logistics and economics of publishing expansions. The market is so narrow, exclusively the people who own a product that already isn't particularly prevalent in the general populace, yet there's publishers out there making dozens of expansions. Nick, do you have a lot to say when it comes to expansions?
From my
I do.
Yeah, I mean, so from my perspective, unless your game is just an absolute, like, one of the biggest hits of the year, I think generally an expansion is a waste of time and money and effort. That said, we do often. I love extra content for games that I love, especially for our projects. So our workaround for that is that when we release a game to Kickstarter for its first time, what we're looking at is there the opportunity for more gameplay here, and can we use that as like a Kickstarter incentive? So we're actually in the habit for most of our games of releasing like a mini expansion of sorts at the same time that the game is initially launched, and we often offer that as like a free gift to our backers to encourage them to back the game instead of wait for retail. The nice thing about that is it allows the artist to knock everything out at once. We don't have to go back to them and do a whole nother brief and do a whole nother, through the whole process from start to finish again. And it kind of consolidates the production as well because we're producing everything at once. So I think it saves money in the long run. Some people may look at that as like, why are you separating out content from the base game? But most often the designers is bringing us what we all consider a finished game. And then we go back to them and say, hey, we think expansion content is possible for this game, and if you're able to make some of that, then we're going to use that as a way to increase our direct sales so that we make us more money and we increase your royalties. And oftentimes the designer's on board with that. It doesn't take them too much effort and time to develop a little something extra. So that's the extent of what we do. And honestly, we're not going to make a larger later expansion for any of our games unless it becomes like the next Codenames or whatever, something that really sells gangbusters. So that's my take.
Now, you have released one expansion after the game, correct?
Right.
Like as today, you've released a Trailblazers expansion.
That's right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
We've done it a few times.
Mm-hmm.
We've released a few expansions post the original game coming out.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to dispel a different myth that you brought up is expansion content on release, right? Like with a Kickstarter, as like a Kickstarter promotion. There tends to be like a viewpoint of like some backers or some people that say, you're just stripping content out of the base game to separate into an expansion to make more money. Mm-hmm. That's not true because there's two things at play. Number one is keeping the base game costs down. Right. And a lot of times adding that expansion content would increase the base game price to make us have to charge more for it. The second thing is there is also the idea of what is the best gameplay experience out of the box for most people. And while you might be somebody who backs Kickstarters and is a hobby gamer and can deal with like multiple variants and expansions in the box, that is oftentimes not the best experience for people that are just experiencing this game for the first time, that may not be as experienced of a gamer as you, that will oftentimes be confused and not understand what they're looking at and just not be as interested in playing the game after their experiences, like getting into the components and everything, is not seamless and well done. Right. So there is a lot of thoughtfulness that goes beyond like what is the best core gameplay experience for the game, and then what type of expansion content works well. One of the expansions that we did was River Valley Glassworks has a very small expansion, very cheap expansion that is a bunch of different cards that add a ton of different modules to the game. That game sells in Target. And there are a lot of people that buy River Valley Glassworks that are not experienced hobby gamers. And I'll even say this, the solo mode on the back of the player board sometimes throws those people. And they're like, I don't understand why there's a solo mode and why all these boards look weird on the back, right? And that's like one of the things that we had to like deal with trying to figure out how we want that to come across in the base game. But the other thing that's really important is that expansion. I think a lot of people would be like, I don't understand what all these cards are for. Am I supposed to use them? Am I not supposed to use this? I don't know what a variant is. I don't know what an expansion is. Like, expansion is not, like, in terms of games, it's not something, there's no expansions to Monopoly. There's no expansions to a lot of these games. So, like, I just wanted to kind of clarify that. Now, as far as, like, how I feel about expansions, don't waste your time as a publisher making expansions unless your game is a massive success. Yeah. The only expansions that we've really ever done has been for like that were not on release have been for Kabuto Sumo, which is one of our all-time best-selling games, right? So that's one thing. I think that you're going to sell so much fewer expansions once you have released that base game. The attachment rate is going to be like maybe 20 to 25% of base game sales.
Yeah.
Retailers don't like stocking them. Basically, unless you have a massive success of a game, expansions are really just going to be like time, energy, effort, and money that you could have spent making another game.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my core belief. So I only really work on expansions when it makes the most sense. Now, we are about to do an expansion coming out next year. So you're hearing it here first. But we're doing an expansion for A Message from the Stars. And I'm actually very excited about this because this has been a game that has sold very well for us. Has it been like a blowout success? It has not. But there's a very hardcore audience for this game, and the expansion is relatively like inexpensive to produce, and the concept is really, really cool. So we think it might be able to like refresh that game, give the fans something. And it's not, it didn't take so much bandwidth away from us that it took the place of a whole other game. We just kind of worked on this in conjunction with all the rest of our production things. But if you're like, I'm going to Kickstarter and you have the choice between an expansion between an existing game and a brand new game, always choose the brand new game. That's my advice. Yeah,
especially if there's enough changes to the core game that you can almost do like a spin-off game. Like you guys did another version of Kabuto Sumo, right? You see different versions of like Dune that have come out instead of a new expansion again. And I think that's a really smart way to do it because your audience goes from everybody that owns the game currently to anyone, right? And that's a much larger potential market to sell to. Yeah, I like that. Next one we have is also from Chai Cube. Also, I know you guys are really transparent with it, and I really appreciate that. But I am always wondering how much publishers modify games once they receive it from the designer. You hear every so often how variants are added, themes are changed, player power tacked on, and whatnot. Is that commonplace? How do designer contracts even work? Does the designer hand it off and the publisher can do whatever they want? So yeah, kind of a multi-part question there. But to start with the first part, like how often do publishers modify games once they receive it? I'd say the vast majority of times, it's like very rare that nothing changes.
I mean, I've actually had a few games because we have our Tiny Box line that has like very simplistic it just has like simple card games in it, right?
Yeah.
We didn't change Rainbow at all. We didn't change Panda at all. Like there are certain card games that we've released where we're like, this doesn't need any changes to it whatsoever. So certain things like that exist, but I would say like overall, I would say like 90% of the games that are coming in through Allplay are going to be touched, and I would say more than 50% are going to be touched pretty heavily. Like they're going to be fully developed through a development cycle. They're going to be fully like play tested. There is going to like oftentimes be theme changes, other types of changes. Like we're just not like I don't know that there's really many games at all that I have not made theme changes to, right? Because I generally feel like a lot of the things that we do to add the theming to the game is in the game's best interest, right? But here's, I guess, to like encapsulate a lot of this, there are 3 things that I tell publishers when they sign games with us.
Designers.
I tell designers when they sign games with us, there's 3 things that I tell them in that meeting where we're talking about the contract and the fact that we want to move forward with their game. And I think this will encapsulate most of what you'll get across. But this is from me as a company. I tell them these are 3 things. Number 1, you can be as involved or as not involved in the process as you want to be. I'm not going to keep you in the dark about what we're doing. I will show you the art. I will talk to you about the artists that we're hiring. I will let you be in the, conversation with the development and everything like that. You can add your 2 cents, and anything that you tell me about your game and about your product, I will take seriously and I will seriously consider it. Number 2, and some people are like, I don't care. Just do whatever. Let me know when it's done. Number 2, right? The second thing is I tell them, if me and you get into a pretty big disagreement about, like, if I don't care, like, and you're like, oh, I think this, and I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, then that's fine. But if you're like, I really feel strongly that this needs to change in the game, and I'm like, I really feel strongly that it doesn't, I will win that tie. Like, I break ties, right? Like, I'm going to break ties when it comes to the game. The third thing that I tell them is, I want to sell more copies of your game than you want me to sell copies of your game. Trust me on that, right? Like, I want your game to sell better than you want your game to sell better. And I am going to do everything I can to make sure that it sells better within the health of the entire company, right? Like, I am not going to devote marketing resources to a game that isn't selling well just to sell a few extra copies of your game when it could be better spent towards a game that is selling well and the market is receiving well. So overall, I would say that those are like three of my like really big things that I try to focus in on.
Yeah, no, I think that covers it really well. And the designer contracts can vary by designer. If it's a more established designer, sometimes they have their contract that they want to sign instead of the publisher's contract, and that can have different agreements and stuff. So there's a lot of variance there, but I think your answer sums it up really well. So a couple more from ChatCube. I don't know if this has been addressed before, but I'm really curious how long the workflow is from start of development to Kickstarter to production and retail is. I can start with that. So it definitely depends on the game. Some games, need a lot of development to get them to where everybody's happy about it, the publisher and designer. Others are ready to rumble, and the artwork's easy to do, and you can fast track that thing to release within less than a year sometimes. But I think most often when we're signing a game, we are not releasing it for at least 2 years, because we have to fit it into our schedule, and we're usually scheduled at least a year out on our end. And then on top of that, if we're getting a busy artist to work on it, then they need several months lead time usually before they can jump on it. And then they might need several months to work on it before it's even ready for us to market on Kickstarter, for example. And then if we take it to Kickstarter, that's going to take at least 6 months. If the files are ready to rumble, it usually takes at least 6 months from when the day the Kickstarter launches to when we're actually delivering to backers. And so, yeah, it can be a long process, but other games can end up being like 3 or 4 years. I know, and it depends on the contract too. For most of our designer contracts, we agree to release the game and start selling it within, usually 2 or 3 years, somewhere in that ballpark. And so we're kind of contractually obligated to meet that deadline unless something big happens and the designer's okay with us delaying it. But that's usually how it goes for us.
Yeah, I would say I'm signing games currently at the end of 2025 for games that are releasing in 2027, and then it's probably going to be another 5 to 6 months before they're actually like out in the wild.
Yeah.
So like right now, I'm signing games that are like most likely going to be like on Kickstarter in 2027. So we're talking about, let's just say, 1 year, like 18 months before it's on Kickstarter, and then another 6 months. So probably like if I signed your game now, by the time it releases, probably 2 years.
Yeah.
I would say that's on average. Like before it is for sale, 2 years. Like you're going to have your game in and sometimes there's a game that comes out that just kind of gets to sneak in there because so for instance, we got the rights to Through the Desert, and we're like, I'm not sitting on this for 2 years. We're getting this out like now, yeah. Right? And I think I had Through the Desert out within a year of signing it. Yeah. And so that felt really good, but like that's kind of sometimes like will happen. Container, we actually signed the contract for that like in July. Wow. And had it on so sometimes things happen and you're like, okay, we're gonna move really fast. Yeah. Like we signed a party game this summer and it's gonna be out at Gen Con. Like it's sometimes things get to creep in and move around and shift, but like and get fast tracked, right? But generally I would say that if I'm signing a game and I'm interested in your game, 2 years is a good expectation. Yeah.
And that's a good segue into ChatCube's last question. So how do you keep an exciting project like that under wraps for so long when
I tell Nick.
That's true, yeah.
I talk to Nick about it, and Nick gets excited about it, and Nick tells me about his games, and I get excited about it. And I mean, I don't know. Yeah. Like, I also just don't care if people know about information a little bit early. Like, I'm not like Allplay does not try to be like I kind of like just talking about stuff in general. So
that's true. Yeah, the internal team, it helps to kind of release some of that steam. It's funny because especially in the past few years, we've released like some classic or cult classic Knizia games, and I'm on a large like Knizia fan Discord server, and oftentimes these folks will talk about an old game and be like, "Man, I wish a new version of this would come out," and like Bitewing, you should do it, and I'm like sitting there chuckling because it's like, "Oh yeah, we already have the artwork done for that new version," and yeah, give it a few months, but it's fun to watch people talk about stuff like that, but. Yeah, we've managed to keep it under wraps for the most part.
All right. This one's from Jordan. I'm curious about something from a publisher's perspective on something I've seen a couple of times recently. Publishers release different riffs on the same game around the same time. I've seen this happen twice recently, and one involves Bitewing. Recently, two different games came out that are riffs off of Beowulf/Kingdoms, Iliad and Cosmolancer. And then we also had two new riffs on Hachi Train come out to the USA, Hungo from Happy Camper and Nanatori Dori from Kid Sable Board Games. How does this happen? Are the designers shopping different iterations of the same game at the same time, independent of one another? I know that there are differences in publication and rule set, but it doesn't seem like it would feel great as a publisher if you're bringing games to the market to find out another publisher is doing the same. I do not want to approach the Nanatori Dori / Jungo, whatever it's called, situation, because I actually know the behind the scenes of that situation, and it's not my place to say like what's going on there. But but I will let you speak to like the Bitewing one.
Yeah, so I mean, Knizia, working with Rainer Knizia is a very interesting prospect from a publisher perspective because he's been doing this for decades and he has over 800 published games, and those games are not all entirely different. There's a lot of overlap between them, either mechanically or it's like a re-implementation of the same game. And so, because we've leaned so hard into Knizia releases the past few years, it's kind of motivated me to really understand and know his catalog super well. That way I'm not releasing a worse version of a very similar game that maybe was just released recently or that is quite popular and is a classic. So part of that is like I try to be conscious of like, is there a similar Knizia game like this already that's better, or would maybe Reiner, when he made them, he did not have those two different games in mind at all, and he considers it a whole new game. But would people perceive this as a similar but worse game as another Knizia? So that's something I try to be conscious of. In the case of Iliad and Cosmolancer, that's pretty interesting story where when we were looking to start our Mythos collection for 2 players, Cosmolancer, which was originally Kingdoms, was actually pitched to us. And at the time, Knizia's team had mentioned like, yeah, he has ideas for a 2-player version of this game. And I said, that would be cool. And, Kingdoms is a pretty interesting game. And then a few weeks later, they came back to me and said, hey, we have a brand new 2-player game from Knizia, check it out. And that ended up being Iliad. And it does have a little bit of similar structure. And I think what happened, this is my guess, I haven't talked to Renner about it, is that he looked at Kingdoms and said, how would this work as a 2-player game? And then that was the inspiration for making Iliad, which ended up feeling quite different at the end of it. But I can see the similarities there. So yeah, I mean, it definitely, it's uncanny though, how often similar things come out. Like when we launched Soda Smugglers, there was another publisher launching a soda themed bottle cap game, right? When we were looking to launch Trailblazers, we were going to name our game Trails, and like I settled on that name, and then the next day it was I think Keymaster came out with Trails, and it was like, okay, that's weird. So it's weird how like publishers can be working in parallel, unknown that they're working on a similar idea or project.
I had a publisher reach out to me, and I don't think it was an ill intent, but they were like, dude, what's going on? And I was like, what? And he's like, you just like launched a game that is eerily similar to my game. He's like, it's got the same theme, it's got weird shaped tiles, it has like the whole thing about surrounding, and like it's very similar to my game. He even said, he's like, I'm not accusing you of anything, but I want to know how this happened. Yeah. And my response to him was, well, first of all, I've been working on this game for over a year, so that's first thing. Yeah. Second, like I have receipts with the artist going all the way back to then, and then even beyond that, I was like, this is also a re-implementation of a much older design. Like we didn't do like we didn't like sign a game that was like, this game has existed for like well before you started publishing games. I'm sorry that you feel like there's a lot of overlap, but I didn't do anything. It's just, and also it was like a game about like butterflies and insects and stuff. And again, I do not think that publisher had any ill intent in reaching out to me. I think he was just like, felt very like, this is weird. And so I was just like, hey man, I'm really sorry that this feels this way, but I can tell you from my personal perspective, there is no shady stuff going on at all, because like, this is a pretty innocuous theme. It's butterflies and other little insect creatures and flowers and pollinating. It's pretty common.
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I think honestly it happens more often than you would expect, where it's like, oh shoot, we've been working on this game for forever, and now suddenly there's this other game announced that's kind of similar, either a similar theme or similar title or similar mechanisms. It's weird.
And this is why I don't sign NDAs with designers. This is one of the reasons I refuse to sign an NDA with a designer. And sometimes they'll be like, "Oh, will you sign my NDA before you look at my game?" And I'm like, "I absolutely will not."
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because there's a very good chance that they might show me a overlapping tile game about dinosaurs, right? And I would look at that design and go, I'm literally making an overlapping tile game about dinosaurs, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm doing that right now.
Yeah.
And if I sign that NDA, like there is a good chance that that person could accuse me of seeing their design and stealing it. So in 6 months when my overlapping dinosaur tile game comes out, they go, "Hey, wait a minute. Like that's not like so that's one of the reasons I won't sign an NDA with you is because I just like I don't like there's so many games out there, and I have seen so many games that are so close together in terms of theme, mechanics, everything. Like your idea is not unique to you. I'm just letting you know, right? It might be the best version of the thing, but it's not unique to you.
Right.
Okay? So I look at hundreds of prototypes a year. I see a lot of overlap in the industry.
Absolutely. Let's jump to the next question. So from Peter, how important is concept versus execution when you're evaluating games? I think that's a little different of
Do a percentage.
Oh, for me,
how much? Like,
I was going to say, I think my percentage is different from yours, and that's because you work with a lot of developers and I do not. So execution is probably on our end, it's probably like 80 to 90% important versus concept is like 10%. Like, and what the way I'm approaching that is like how polished, how complete is the game. I am not in the business personally of taking like a really interesting concept that has awful execution and turning it into a sellable product, because I don't feel like I have the expertise, and I'm not in a circle with developers who I trust to be able to do something like that. My worry is that if I take a really amazing concept that has like awful execution, that I'm going to invest all this money in development and get it to a point where maybe it's okay, but it's still not a great product. And I've already sunk all this money into the designer royalty advance and the development costs and maybe the artwork of it. And I don't want to have to put out a product that I'm like, well, we almost got it there, but not quite. But this is the best we can do. I'd rather take a well-executed game that I know I can sell, that I know I can get to the finish line, that's already there or almost there, and get it across. I know you guys have a different experience, and you have a lot of a knack for developing games. So I'd be interested to hear your take.
I'm like 70-30 concept versus execution. Like if your game is interesting and like I see something there and like I'm like, I know what it takes to get a game there. I know how much effort and how much money it takes to get a game there. And if I see that end product as like viable, I am like, yeah, like we're going to move forward with this. And yeah, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of effort to do something like that. Like Sail Legacy was signed at pretty much 90-10, right? It was like 90% concept, 10% execution at that point. Yeah. But I can tell you, it's one of the most interesting, amazing products that we've ever developed, right? Yeah. And that's the thing, is I was working with somebody that I knew very well with Taylor. So that was like a difference. But like even like the solo game that I'm working on, that one was like mostly concept I was signing it on. There was some really good stuff in there, but like the work that's being done to that game is like in terms of execution, like we have made some significant changes to that game, and I would say that game was like 70-30 concept versus execution.
Yeah, and I think it depends on how simple the game is too. Like for me at least, if the game is much simpler, then I can kind of lean into that concept idea more. Where if it's a more complex Euro style, whatever, like a lot of systems working together, it's like I don't know if you or I or a developer can get this to a point where it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, well, sometimes I will look at a game and like I'm like enamored by the theme, right? I'm like, oh man, this is so, or like there's a like component thing and I'm like, I can't see past this, and I will give it to a developer that I trust and I will be like, play this and tell me if it's good or not, unobjectively. Like I just want you to be like, this game is trash or this game is good. And sometimes I'll do like a little evaluation run with like some developers that I trust, because I'm like, I am just seeing nothing but like, whoa, there's a wind up dinosaur in this game. I have to have it. And like, that's not a good place to be in as like someone who's trying to run a business. So sometimes if I'm like, I can tell I'm enamored with a concept, I'm like, I want to make sure that there is some execution there. Right?
Yeah.
I don't want to just sign on a gimmick, right?
So, yeah, gut check. No, that's good.
How much does it sway you if a designer brings a theme, name, art suggestion? It doesn't sway me at all because it is just a suggestion. I still remember that I was sitting in a development playtest session with a designer, and I had an actually great night at Gen Con. I was doing some just like development playtesting with a designer and a developer, and we played a game, and I was like, I want to sign this, and I really like it, but the theme is terrible. And they're like, really? You don't like the theme? I thought it was really good. And I was like, no, it's bad. And they literally went, well, what would you do? And I was like, well, I would make it about this, and I would do this, and I would change this to this, and I would call it this. And they literally just went, you're really good at this. And I was like, I am really good at this. But in like an instant, I was like, you're really unappealing like theme and name. I literally changed to something far more evocative and far more thematic and far more interesting in terms of like a game than you thought of, right? And it's not like, oh, I'm better at this than you are, but it's just, or it wasn't like you're bad at this. It was just more like, I know what I'm doing when it comes to like product.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a couple times where a pitch comes to me and it has an interesting theme, or I can kind of see, oh yeah, this would have a thematic or artistic or component hook to it, and that definitely gets me more interested in considering the pitch, maybe trying out the game, that kind of thing. But otherwise, yeah, it doesn't have much sway. I agree.
Yeah, your theme, your name, and your art, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's really, really not. So just trust the publisher in that department, please.
Yeah.
If you feel really, really strongly about it, I get that. I'm trying. Let me look real quick. Is there a game where I was just like, the theme on this is so perfect that I have to keep it? I mean, dice fishing, but that was pretty simplistic, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of like something where I was like, oh, this is like really, really good. No, A Message from the Stars was like about like just seance-y stuff, and I like my theme a lot better than that one. Nope, all of them are bad. I'm sorry, guys. Yeah, none of you have good themes.
I will say Trailblazers was really good. I think Ryan Courtney started out with that game being like a circuitry theme, which is like awful from a sales perspective. But then he changed it before I ever saw it to a hiking, biking, kayaking theme. So when I heard about that, he had mentioned the theme of the game before anything else, and I was like, ooh, that kind of game could sell well. This was several years ago before it became really a major, I guess, trend in the industry. But yeah, obviously that's done really well for us. So that was the one example I'd give of like, yeah, that was really good use because it was very, right straight away, it was a very Instagrammable concept. So it worked great for us. Okay, that was from Peter, and he's got one more question. If you could make one change to your company immediately, what would you change?
I would make our small box just slightly bigger so that it could fit tarot cards and 2 decks of cards side by side.
You've told me that before. Yeah, I've been tempted to go with that, theoretical bigger box size for some of our small games coming up. But
like if it was just like, if it just went like that, like it would be like, oh, perfect. Like yeah. I honestly like if it's like 120 by 120. If it was like 135 by 135, it would be perfect.
The cost difference on that, do you think it would be very much at all?
No, but we can't change it now. Yeah. We just can't.
Yeah, you're locked in.
I have 40-something small box games. I think the industry would riot. Like, they would riot if we did that. They would be like, what are you doing? And honestly, I like the constraint, and I like the small portability of the small square box.
Yeah, it is nice.
I just am like, sometimes it's like, oh, I can't fit 2 decks of cards side by side.
Yeah. Little flexibility would be nice.
Kind of stinks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For us, I mean, right now, this is a 2025 thing, but like tariffs have sucked a lot of our cash dry right now. So if I could go back, I would have printed less games the past, year that we were committing to print runs. I would have printed less games so we had more cash on hand. And aside from that, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, when we came out with like Soda Smugglers, Poo Mafiosi, and Hot Lead, those are very casual card games. They're not like BGG crowd, favorites. And I wonder if that kind of set the wrong expectation for us in those early years of Bitewing Games, because now we do a little bit heavier stuff, not super heavy, but like more hobbyist tailored games. And I wonder if those initial games that we released like kind of set the wrong idea in people's minds about what kind of games we released. Because if you look at this year, what we put out compared to those first 3 games, like it's kind of a different target audience, even though they're Knizia games. So that's the one thing I wonder as well.
I don't think anybody attaches those games to you in a way of like, wow, what a departure. Like
That's true.
I mean, I just don't like that. Kickstarter had like 300 backers. I just don't think that many people are like, that's Bitewing.
Yeah,
like
that's true. Yeah, I think we released enough other stuff quickly enough that it kind of quickly faded. And I think they're still great games, but yeah.
I think most people associate you with the Zuvadas and Trailblazers more than anything else.
Yeah, that's true. Cool.
Veranor.
Veranor?
I don't know how to
Veranor?
This is an interesting question, but it's going to be a very simple answer. What would it take to have board games reuse certain components instead of just selling all new ones every time? So let's say I started a board game publishing company and I sold like a bunch of different kinds of dice and cubes and pawns in my first game, and then every subsequent game I sold was like, oh, just use all of the non-card and cardboard components and board from this game, like in this game, right? And that way I could cut down on the cost. So like every game I came out with was kind of like a $45 production, but I could sell it for like $25 because you bought the first game and then okay, so there's a few things here. Number one, you have no idea what someone's first intro point to your company is, and by being like, hey, you can't play this game as is, you actually have to buy this other game, is a really hard thing to get across in a retail market. This seems like it might work only for like an online e-commerce style business with like a very specific vision from the very beginning. You'd have to like go into this. So that's something that I would say. And I think it's a terrible idea. I think there was a company that actually tried to do this.
Those cheap ass games, right? Where they're like, you find your own dice, you find your own pieces or whatever.
Yeah. No. No. Sorry.
Yeah.
No. It's what would it take? It would take all publishers getting on the same page. And me and Nick are a part of a couple of like publisher group chats. And I can tell you right now, there's no way you're getting all of these publishers on the same page.
That's true.
No way. And also, it's just you're asking everyone to make less money as well. And also you're asking for people not to have customized components. Like you're making a lot of really big asks, and no one's on board with that, because it basically means that like if a company tried to do that, more power to them. As far as like a aesthetical brand thing, I just think it's a bad idea from start to finish.
Yeah, even from
I think conceptually Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice in theory, but like I think even as a hobbyist gamer, like if I bring one game and be like, oh shoot, I left my other game at home that has the components for this, not playing it today, it would just be annoying, right? And I think most people wouldn't go for it, even though it's nice in theory to cut down on clutter. So,
what license would you publish a game for if you could get the rights?
Yeah, I mean, I've tried. I can give you a list of games I've tried to get the license for over the past few years. Okay, El Grande before the new version came out, Dogs of War before.
Oh no! Oh wait! Hold on, wait. I think they're talking about like an IP,
What license?
not like a. Yeah, like what license would you publish a game
Oh, like
for
an
if you
IP?
could get the rights? Yeah, I don't think they're talking about like reprints of games.
Oh, okay.
I think they're talking about very specifically I think they're talking about a licensed product, like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it would probably be one of my favorites. Like, I would love to do a Nintendo licensed game, like Mario Kart, Zelda, Super Smash Bros. Some kind of Mario game, you name it. Like, I think that would be pretty rad. I'm a big Nintendo fan. Fantastic Mr. Fox, or even just like a Roald Dahl, one of those books in general. I think those have a lot of character and personality. It'd be fun to make a game out of them. Cuphead, I think I love the aesthetic of Cuphead, and like the personality of that game. So those are a few that come to mind right away for me. I think it'd be harder for me to do like a movie, especially with a lot of lore, or a book with a lot of lore, because it's like you'd have to hire on an expert in that IP just to not miff the fans and leave out some character that they wanted, or mess up the thematic integration, that kind of thing. So
I want to do a Zelda game.
Yes.
That is my white whale, is I want to do a Zelda game. Because I believe almost any publisher that got their hands on Zelda would do a bad job. I honestly believe that. I think most publishers, I know exactly what kind of game they would create, and it would be bad.
Yeah.
And I know what kind of game I would create, and I think it would be very true to what a Zelda game experience would give you. Because what I think a lot of people forget is Zelda isn't really about the combat.
Right.
It's about the puzzles. And I think publishers are going to swing hard into combat and forget the puzzles. And I think I want to do like a 50-50 puzzles and combat.
I like that. I'm on board with that. I endorse Joe Wiggins and Allplay for a Legend of Zelda game. Maybe someday we can bring it to life.
Yeah, but that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
So, all right. From Justin, what is the biggest curveball you've been thrown during the planning development process of one of your games that still ultimately was published, and how did you overcome it? I spoke about this at length on the development episode that we did for where we had Robert on and talked about Merchants of Andromeda. That game was all curveballs. So, but I talked at length on that episode, so I'm not going to get into it again.
Oh, I don't know if I have a good answer for this right now. I guess if one strikes me later on, I'll come back to it. But yeah, we can jump ahead. So,
from 16 Oceans, how do you balance publishing games that you enjoy versus what you think the market would support? This can encompass gameplay, artwork, production, etc. Because I like paying my employees and I like them having paychecks. And so sometimes I publish games that, well, that's not true. I like all the games I publish, but sometimes I have an idea of like, this will hit a more critical mass than this one, which is a bit more niche. And I oscillate. Like, I will do games that I think are a bit more niche, like A Message from the Stars. And I will do games that I think will be more critically or like well bought, right? Like more mass appealing, like a River Valley Glassworks. And the balance of those is important because it's not like a one for them, one for me. It's all just games that I enjoy and I think are good enough to publish. I don't publish any games that I think are bad, but sometimes I will publish games that I'm like, oh, this, I can see this selling a lot is sometimes one of the reasons I will sign it. I will never sign a bad game that I don't like, that I'm like, oh, this might make a lot of money, because my brain doesn't work that way. So I would say that, like, also, like, I don't quite understand the idea of this can encompass gameplay, artwork. I choose the artist. So I'm never like, I never like am like, I'm gonna put artwork I hate on a board game because it's gonna sell well.
Yeah.
Well, I guess like that's one of the things like somebody keeps bringing up in our company. I have one employee that keeps going, we should do a game with the same artwork that like Unstable Unicorns has because that stuff sells really well. And I'm like, yeah, but that's their aesthetic, and I hate it, and I don't want my games to look like that. So I guess maybe from that perspective, so I don't make those choices. I try to like always choose art that I think will sell well, but I don't ever like choose artwork that I think will sell well that I hate.
Yeah,
because I want to be proud of the product. I don't know. Like I find this question very odd personally. So because I don't feel like I have to make those choices.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like I said, because I have a separate job, this sometimes is a little bit more of like a hobby for me than a business, although that's becoming less the case as time grows and the business grows, right? But one thing that helps me, at least, I try to play a lot of the hot games, hot new releases of each year, especially the ones that interest me, so I can kind of like make sure that I'm aware, and I've got a finger on the pulse of like what's selling well and what's trending and stuff. And that way, when I come across a new project, I have a better idea of like, is this even something that's trending right now, or does it have the possibility to sell well? But yeah, I mean, especially early on, a lot of what I signed for Bitewing Games was like just stuff that I was interested in or that I loved. And the deeper we get into it, and certain games that I loved, still love to this day, but haven't sold as well. That's been kind of a reality check, I guess, where it's a reminder of like, hey, you can't just put out stuff that you love or that's super niche, because that can hurt your ability to invest in new projects. That can hurt the company and things like that. And I want to keep doing this, so that's a good motivator to, make sure I'm releasing games that are likely to sell well. So.
Under what circumstances would your bandwidth, ability to publish a different amount of games change? I think your answer is simple. When you, A, can quit your job, and B, bring on an employee, would probably affect both of those things pretty largely.
Yeah, I'll mention one thing. Like for us, I don't think we would have published or released nearly as many games at this point right now if we didn't have a partner like Allplay to help us with like the logistics side of things. Because there are so many tasks to publishing a game. Development, Kickstarter, release, marketing, and everything that goes into that. And if you don't have a team, whether it's your own employees or you have a partner who helps bear some of that load, then it's really going to slow you down. I don't really do much design. I don't do any design work. That's how I got into Bitewing Games, was designing my own games. I don't do that at all anymore. I just don't have time or energy for it. And then occasionally I have a little bit of time to help develop one of our games, but usually I'm relying on somebody else to do that. So it really, like you said, it depends on how big your team is and how quickly you can crank out new titles, I suppose.
So we are currently in the process of hiring our 18th, 19th, and 20th full-time employee here at Allplay. And I'm very proud of that. Because that is what energizes me to do this, is the fact that we have an amazing team here and that we get to do what we do. And honestly, a lot of the people that we're bringing on right now are all to increase our bandwidth to do more, right? We're very careful about hiring. We're very, slow when it comes to hiring. But in general, a big part of what we're trying to do is to create our bandwidth to be larger. And so in general, I would say that the more the company scales, like as far as like us, we don't really want to increase our bandwidth right now as far as how many games we're publishing, because like we're doing kind of like what I would say the maximum output of a publisher to put games out. If I hired people to put 44 games out per year, there's just a limit to how much a customer base can support
Yeah.
in general, right? So like we're actually thinking about scaling back the number of games that we do because it's not always about the output. We had a reason that we were publishing so many games at such a rapid pace. 2026 will kind of be the end of Allplay putting out as many games as we typically do, and we'll be shifting into a kind of a very slightly different model of what we're doing. But I would say right now we're in the process of like expanding our bandwidth for different reasons. But for us specifically, that's kind of where it's at. I would also say, Nick, like you're scaling a little bit back the number of games that you're releasing per year as well.
Yeah.
It's just like there's kind of a market fluctuation that's also happening right now. So it's kind of an important time frame to kind of look at like how much output a publisher has and whether or not that's the most effective way to be doing things. But at the beginning of a company, right, which I've been at and Nick is at currently, putting out a lot of games is one of the best marketing things that you can be doing as a company, and also is one of the best things you can do to grow your company. So I don't know what to like. That's kind of an interesting answer there, I guess.
Yeah. If you're a new publisher, unless your initial release or two are like mega hits, it's going to take a long time for you to grow unless you're putting out like consistently great games at a fairly frequent pace. And I wouldn't say now's a good time to do that with the economy and things as they are, to be investing heavily in very early growth of a board game company. Because a lot of companies right now are, they've overreached their ability to provide for their employees or to keep up with budget demands and costs and things, and now they're shrinking back down or they're closing altogether. So unfortunately, now's not a great time to be aggressively growing a company unless you're well established and you have a good plan. So,
Nick, what is your favorite game you've published and why?
It gets harder every year with all the new games that we're putting out. But I'd say currently it's still Zoo Vadis, for a lot of reasons. But one of them is it's just one of my favorite games to play. I love that negotiation interaction deal, and it was very pivotal in a lot of what we've done since then. It was a very successful formula. It started with taking this game that everybody in the industry had like dismissed and forgotten, this game from 1992 that hadn't had a reprint since the early 2000s, and basically just totally written off, and kind of finding something special there that's still relevant to today's audience and market, and then working with some really talented people like Rainer Knizia to develop it, and Kwanchai Mori and Bridget Delicato to do the artwork and graphic design, and bringing it to life, and seeing that whole process from start to finish was like, it was definitely one of the absolute highlights for me of Bitewing Games, and still a game I love to play, and one of our biggest successes. So there's a lot of reasons for it, but for me the answer is Zoo Vadis still.
Mine is Things and Rings, and that is from so many different standpoints of what kind of game it is. It's so unique. It's so different. There's nothing really like it in the industry. Number 2, I had a big hand in the development of that game. Number 3, a lot of what that product is because of my vision. Number 4 is because it has captured so much of a wider audience than Allplay had ever seen before. And I think for all of those reasons, it's just a game that I look at, and I look at how much love and care I put into that game, and how it actually turned out as successful as it did, is always just going to be like such a figurehead in my mind of like what we're able to accomplish. And I'm really proud of just like everything about that game. Just across the board. The designer gave me a great compliment. I don't really take it this way, but the designer said that he believes that Things and Rings is 70% mine, 30% his. That's the way he split it. I feel like it was more 50-50, but I and also like when he showed me the design, he was not pitching it to me. He was like, "Can I show you this like stupid thing I'm working on?" And I looked at it and I went, "I love this and I'm taking it."
This is
so
fine now.
like I saw the vision from the very beginning, how much I enjoyed it. So I Things and Rings is really
this
good.
This released last year, right? Things and Rings. Is it now one of your best? I'm just curious. Is it one of your best-selling small box games at this point? That's awesome.
Yeah, it is, and it right now has a lot of mass market opportunity that we're working on, and so I'm really excited to see where that goes. So we're pretty pumped about it.
Super cool.
How complete should a game be to be pitched to Allplay or Bitewing Games, assuming it has been thoroughly play tested? I don't know the answer to this.
It kind of goes back to concept versus execution, right? That question.
Yeah. I mean, you have to think it's ready. I don't know. I don't. I've signed games that are like rough, like pretty darn rough.
Yeah.
I've signed games that are like final, like almost like completely done.
Yeah.
So like I would say that like you have to feel like it's ready, right? Like if you show me a game if you show me a game, so this is I guess a different thing, right? Concept versus execution. If you pitch me a concept, that's nothing I can sync. Like you have to have a game, right? You can't be like, here's an idea. I'm not signing an idea. I have to sign a game, right?
Yeah.
So like, if we're talking about concept and execution, like you have to have like, it's like if your game has a really interesting idea, but it's not like there's some rough edges to it, or things aren't fully like, oh, I don't quite know how like the end game scoring is supposed to work, but this is kind of where I have it right now. But you have to have a fully playable game before you pitch it to me.
Yeah.
So like you have to have a finished product. You can't just be like, here's an idea I have, and like you pull out like a piece of paper out of your pocket. Like I'm like, I don't have anything to sign. I like my answer to that will be, cool. Thanks for showing me. Keep working on it, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think there's a cookie cutter answer here, but I think one thing that helps is like if your playtesters love to play it, if they ask you to play it again, you know, maybe it's not finished, maybe the balance is off, whatever. But if people are like, ooh, this is cool, let's play it again, let's run it back, whatever, then that's a good indicator like, hey, there's external demand for this. And hopefully those playtesters aren't just like your spouse, you know, your significant other who's just being nice and trying to cheer you up or whatever. So, yeah, that's one good indicator, I'd say.
So as long as you feel like it's complete. If you here's the thing. If you feel like your game is fun, then you should feel ready to pitch it. Doesn't have to be perfect,
yeah,
but it has to be fun.
Yeah.
If you can consistently have enjoyable play experiences with your game, show it to people. That's when. Okay. What is one thing that happens behind the scenes at your company that customers might find interesting?
I'll let you go first. I got to think of one.
I mean, I would say right now, I don't know who knows this and who doesn't. I think it's pretty common. It's out there. We work in an underground cave.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah, like we work in an underground cave. We have a 70,000 square foot warehouse, but it literally is in a mine shaft. Pretty much like it's in a limestone mine that you have to drive underground to get to. Semi trucks come down here. There's electricity, internet. It's all good. But it is like kind of freaky when like people come in for the very first time, and I'll kind of like drive them around inside the cave because it's huge, and they're just like, this is insane. And I'm like, it's lost all meaning to me because I've been like driving to a cave to go to work, which is really great because like sometimes I'll be like, off to the mines.
Yeah. With the dwarves.
Good.
Yes.
It's a good dad joke. Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of a thing. But I would say, like, on a more serious answer, seeing how much happens on a daily basis here. Like right now, we are actively fulfilling 4 different Kickstarter projects and filling daily orders and wholesale orders and freight orders and Amazon orders and like you name it. Like there are days that like thousands of packages get like taped up, shipped out, ready to go from our warehouse. So it's pretty incredible to see that.
Allplay goes hard. Allplay goes real hard. Yeah, I do want to make a trip out to your location eventually. On our end, it's not nearly as interesting. I mean, it's just 2 dentists. Some people don't know that. They're surprised. They're like, wait, you're a dentist? And they don't realize there's like a tooth on our logo because it's a little bit subtle, or they don't make the connection like Bitewing means Bitewing X-ray, or that's kind of where it comes from at least. So there you go. I've spent the last few years waking up in the morning, doing Bitewing Games, and then going to see patients in the afternoon, and then coming home and hanging out with the family, and then often after my girls are in bed, doing a little bit more Bitewing Game stuff. So that's a little bit about me and Kyle. Kyle's full-time dentist though, so he's the guy you see on YouTube who somehow carves out time outside of his full-time job to do those kinds of things.
All right, we've only got a couple more questions here, so I think we can get through them.
Yeah,
what do you think?
Let's blitz it. Let's do it.
All right, how do you decide what items to include as a base version of a game and what items make good upgrades, add-ons, deluxe?
And this is from Zach, by the way. And the
Yeah.
previous questions were from Katie, the last three. So thank you for those questions. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier, but like what makes the best core base game experience oftentimes decides what might get parceled out to an expansion or what gets developed as an expansion. And then sometimes it's like, well, what components like need to be upgraded or are going to feel the best upgraded. Like I don't like just upgrading a component just because. I like upgrading a component because it's going to make the gameplay experience better, but you can't really afford to do it for just the base version of the game to keep it at an affordable price point. So there's kind of a trade-off there, and that's kind of how I make those decisions. It's really kind of a little bit of like what's going to make the game not feel cheap, right?
Yeah.
But what would make the game feel deluxe is sometimes that the answer to that question, and then what provides the best gameplay experience versus what would make a really interesting expansion.
Yeah, I think the first question you usually ask is like, can this fit into our budget to begin with for this game, like the target price and everything? And then the second question you ask is like, is this worth upgrading, or is it really going to significantly move the needle for the player experience or from a marketing perspective? And if it's negligible, if it's, you know, between like punchboard and something slightly fancier that costs a lot more, like at this point, I'm with you. I'm usually just sticking with like what's nice but affordable, and then looking for maybe that one or two components that like really stand out as like they feel deluxe, they're in the base game, and then save everything else, the other nice things to have but not essential, for like maybe a deluxe upgrade or something. So
what genre/format of games do you think is an untapped or untested market? I think the crossover between people that like reading books and people that like playing games is very untapped, and we have not quite made the full breach to that. And I think that that's something that I'd like to see a little bit more of.
That's a good point. You know, one of the biggest barriers to entry for board games is reading the rule book, I think, just from a, you know, general perspective. And people who are accustomed to reading long texts, they're going to have an easier time getting into it, right? And I think you bring that up. There's the Smirk and Dagger game that just did gangbusters, right? That's one example of a very blatant, you know, crossover between those two. The A Place for All My Books, I think, is what the game is called. So yeah, that's a good indicator. I guess the other thing that comes to mind for me is seeing games like Trio or Nana, and That's Not a Hat. Taking something that has been taboo in the board game industry for many years, specifically a memory game, or even Wilmot's Warehouse, and turning it into something fun that a lot of people really love. Similar thing with Magical Athlete, that new version getting released. All that it is a roll and move game, which is very taboo in hobby board gaming. Like, most people are like, this is the worst mechanism in the world, and they took it and made it amazingly fun. So I think that's another, you know, those taboo mechanisms that have gotten a bad rap for decades. I think those are becoming, you know, more tapped, I guess, but have been untapped for quite a while. So,
what country do you think will be the next big board game market to sell to? Asia. And I know that that's a continent, not a country, but
Yeah.
There is a very small window on the globe in which 60% of the world lives in that. That would include a big part of China, Japan, India, Singapore, Indonesia, the Philippines, like this little box, right? Such dense populations. Right, 60% of the world's population lives in this little section, right, that you can like draw on the globe. We sell less than 10% of the board games to that market. And those economies are developing, and those countries are developing further and further, and their desire to play board games is going to grow. And guess what? They're more social than a lot of other countries are, like more European-centric countries, right?
True.
Like they do things more socially, right? I think board games are going to be huge in Asia in the next decade. And Allplay is already doing a lot of work to be present in that market when it does explode.
Yeah, I think Japan is probably the leader currently. Maybe Korea as well, as far as like how far along they are developed in the hobby. But it's interesting. You and I just almost a year ago we went to CMON Expo in Thailand, and that was a lot of the focus and kind of the experience of us being there was like, okay, it's growing and there's a lot of room for it to grow much further. So yeah, I think that'll help publishers out a lot too, because as certain countries become less viable to sell most of your games into, or as government policies change, things like that, it's nice to see that there's a lot of growth potential. And right now in Asia, it seems like mobile games and video games are just like huge. You talk to people who are in mobile games or PC games, and like their core audience is like China, and just because the population is huge and they have access to those things. So hopefully, as the board game industry catches up, and a lot of these countries are maybe 20 years behind where maybe the U.S. or Europe is, or even more. But as they catch up, we're going to see a lot of good things there that'll really sustain publishers. So.
When considering signing a game, is a no permanent, or can things be done to revamp a design and pitch it again? I'm going to go ahead and say that for me, generally, a no is pretty permanent. And I might have said this before. In my early days as a board game publisher, I would try, and I do still try to give very constructive feedback to designers, but I will often try to be more blunt about whether or not I am interested in signing their game. Because I feel like if you try to be like, oh, well, if you change this and this and this, like, and I am giving constructive feedback, if I leave like this window open of like, oh, if you change these things, I'll be more interested in the game. Designers often take that feedback with, oh, I'll go change these things and I'll show it to you again and you'll sign it. And that's oftentimes not really the case. And it's not like I'm just trying to be nice to you. It's your game might not be a fit for lots of different reasons. I saw a thread about this from a different publisher that weighed in, and I thought it was like pretty on the nose. Is like somebody, like a designer, was complaining that a publisher took their game under review and gave it back to them and said, actually, we aren't interested in signing this because it's too close to Wingspan. And the designer kind of was like having a little bit of like a, what an idiotic statement. This is nothing like Wingspan. This is blah, blah, blah. Like, I can't believe that they would even say that. I can see like maybe one very small minor thing that they're trying to say about that. The truth is that designer might not have liked your game, and they're just trying to be nice about it, right? It's better than saying like, hey, sorry, we're not going to publish your game because we think it's dumb and it sucks. Like, nobody wants to say that, but like there might be a million reasons that a publisher doesn't decide to take your game, but oftentimes we're not going to say like your game is terrible. No, right? Like it's we don't want to say that like that, and oftentimes we don't think your game is terrible, but we think like maybe we just don't see as viable of a product in it. Maybe we just don't think like how you've developed the game and like what you're doing with it, and maybe we just like are just like blatantly not interested, right? Like, I've not signed games that I thought were pretty interesting that might make good Allplay games because a different publisher told me that designer was a pain in the ass to work with. And they showed me a game and I've been like, oh, this is really cool, but I've made some very polite excuse of why I'm, it's not a good fit for Allplay because I don't want to work with somebody that somebody else told me is a pain to work with, right? Yeah. So sometimes reputation, like, I don't know. But like I said, there's a million reasons that a publisher might not sign your game. But generally, if I say no, it's probably a permanent no.
Yeah. I'll probably give you a very clear like, hey, this is really close. If you can change these two things, we want to publish this game. Like, it'll be very obvious, like, if it's not a no. But I agree. Otherwise, it's usually a no permanently. Another question from Edward: what was the hardest part of launching your first Kickstarter? I would just say, if you're starting up a company and launching your first Kickstarter, by far the hardest thing is just gaining an audience, building an email list, that kind of thing. And that's the most important thing too. But my recommendation, if you're looking to do that, is this is what helped give me a lot of confidence in doing it and taking the leap, is listening to a lot of podcasts, specifically the Board Game Design Lab podcast. And there's a website as well that has a lot of helpful resources, and digging into other resources like Jamie Stegmaier's like crowdfunding blog.
Or the bits,
baby. So, just take your time, absorb this kind of information over the course of months and months. Don't just leap right in with no audience and no knowledge of what you're doing, because there are a lot of pitfalls to starting a company.
Getting your audience is the biggest thing. That's the hardest thing. But the only thing I'll add there is, don't start with what you think might be your biggest flagship product. Start with a small card game, right? Start with something small and easy that you don't need a huge budget for, that you can get a pretty small amount of backers for, and make a game. Because making a card game is pretty easy. And if you can make that and get it out there and fulfill it, you'll have learned so many of the things that you need to do that you can do a bit of a bigger game the next time that you launch a game, right? I've given this advice so many times to small publishers, is like, don't start with this giant, grand, epic game. And sometimes people do and it works out, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But just start with something a bit more simpler and go from there.
It is risky, yeah, because if you make a mistake, it's a small budget, small box card game, it's not going to cost you that much. If you make a mistake on a huge budget, huge audience game, that could sink your company. That could put you into bankruptcy. There's a lot of risk there. So,
what gets easier as you continue to publish from design to delivery? Honestly, everything gets easier the more times you do it. Repetition is easier. It's like, I remember how much time I spent on an art brief on the first time I wrote an art brief for an artist. It was so detailed and so full. And now I get a sense of what an artist can do. I get a sense of their vibe, and I can get an art brief knocked out in like 10 minutes with not as much information, because I can kind of trust the artist a little bit more. I've just worked with 50 different artists at this point, that I know how to work with an artist and how to get what I want out of them.
Yeah.
And so it just it doesn't take as much time. It doesn't take as much time to go through the graphic design. Everything just gets easier the more you do it. So it's just a process, right? It's just a process that you learn better the more you go through it.
Agreed. From Cassie, how do you decide when to launch your games? I'll just share our philosophy. So, I think this has changed over the years. When crowdfunding was in its early days, it was easier to pitch a concept with less artwork, and not have to invest as much upfront in the marketing and such. At this point, there are so many beautiful, great-looking games coming out on Kickstarter or to release every week, that you need to come in guns a-blazing if you want to have a chance of standing out. There are exceptions where people get lucky and maybe they don't put as much effort in up front, or they don't have much to show of the game or the artwork or whatever. But for the most part, I think you need to have great looking art. You need to have, in my opinion, you should have a rule book that people can actually read, and a finalized concept, unless you're Leader Games and you're just bringing in your 30% developed game, and you can sell people on that idea, and you have that history of delivering. For most people, you need to have much more prepared.
How do I decide when to launch my games? When I want them at Gen Con, what I want at Essen, and what I want early in the year.
Yeah.
So now, my three thoughts are: what do I want to have fulfilled and take to UK Games Expo? What do I want to have fulfilled and take to Gen Con? And what do I want to have fulfilled and take to Essen? Is kind of how I think about my release schedule now. It's all based upon convention releases, and a lot of that is because you can get a lot of attention and hype around games when you release them at certain windows of opportunity, and so that's really what I aim for.
Yeah. Another one from Cassie. What do you think is the most common misconception people have about publishing board games?
That you make a lot of money.
True.
Oh my goodness, that you make a lot of money. It's I know that people might think oh, you have a company of 20 people and everything like that. Yeah, I don't drive a Lamborghini, right? I'm so much of what we do gets reinvested right back into the company at Allplay. It's just not as I just think it's so funny that people are like, oh, I'm gonna like put a board game on Kickstarter and quit my day job and become a, like, it's just like, man, I know so many people that did that like 10 years ago, back when it was much more viable to do that, and they are just running a razor thin profit margin company on a treadmill. I think my good friend at AEG, John Zinzer, said sometimes you're on the publish or perish like path, where if you don't publish another game, your company's gone, and you just get just enough from that game to just keep kicking the can down the road. And honestly, it's not like it's not a massive money making endeavor. It is a passion. It is a calling, for lack of a better term,
and a grind,
because a lot of it's a lot of work. Some people, I'm just gonna dig into this just a little bit, right? Some people ask me like what it takes to run a successful board gaming publishing company, like what it takes. Like, people are like, Allplay is so successful, like what does it take? And honestly, the answer is, I work a minimum of 80 hours a week. Like 80 hours a week. I wake up at 6 a.m. every single day, and the first thing I do is I grab my phone and start talking to like my graphic designer in Romania. Like, first thing I do when I wake up, my alarm goes off, I shut it off, I grab my phone, and I look to see what some of the people that work for my company in Romania have been saying overnight, right? And then I go and I take a shower and I brush my teeth, and while I'm getting ready in the morning, I'm looking at emails. Then when I get into the office, I've gotten through a big chunk of my things, and I sit down and I try to accomplish things that I need to do for that day, and I work. I sit in my chair and I work most of the day. And most of my job is not playing board games. I'm not playing board games very much during my day. I'm working. I am working like in this chair, and I am generally here from 7:15 in the morning until 6 p.m. at night, and I go home and I cook dinner and I go to the gym most nights, and I come back and I sit on my couch and I get out my laptop and I work until 1 a.m. Most days. That is most days. Most Saturdays, I work. Most Sundays, I work. And that's what most people, I guess, like, if like, what's the most common misconception? It's a job. It is a hard job. Yeah. It is not like playing board games with your friends 24/7. To run a successful board game publishing company is work, with not a lot of money at the end of the year to show that you're like, oh, look at how much, money that I like. It is just work. And you have to be willing to put in that amount. You have to be willing to learn skills that you never thought you were going to be able to need to learn. You're going to have to be willing to like go the extra miles. And like I have not been home on my birthday for like 6 years because my birthday isn't that important to me, and I have business that happens during a convention every year that is important for me to be at, and I don't spend my birthday at home. Now, missing my kid's birthday, that's a different story. That has never happened, but that's the thing, right? I make the joke, and again, people can judge me. I'm not trying to like be judged by this or anything like that, but like I have a joke that like it's not a good joke. It's not like a joke. It's just more like something that like I've been like is like I'm really excited for my daughter to get married, and I really hope it's not during Gen Con, right? Because like I'm going to be at my daughter's wedding, even if it's during Gen Con, 100%. But I'm probably going to be like skipping the reception if it's during Gen Con, right? Like I'm gonna, I gotta get out of here. I got important stuff I gotta go do, right? Sure. And again, it's a joke. I would absolutely be at my daughter's wedding. Like I'm not, and my daughter's 8 years old. It's not something I have to think about right now. But like it is something that takes a lot of sacrifice and a lot of dedication and a lot of work. And if you're not willing to do that, like that's the thing is like I'm about to have 20 employees. I sacrifice a lot for them. I work really hard for them. It's a lot of work to do this, and you're not a millionaire at the end of the day. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, that's my answer.
No, I agree. You have to really love it, right? And I think to go along with that, I think a lot of people when they think of board game publishing companies, even like Bitewing Games, they imagine like a bigger company, like more people behind the scenes, or like even like a faceless corporation or something. We're just two dentists. we're just two guys with our own families and our own jobs. And yeah, we're cranking out like a lot of games each year, and sometimes they're big games, and sometimes they get a lot of hype. But like this is true for most board game publishers. They're not as big as you think. They're just like a handful of people usually, sometimes just one person, really putting a lot of passion and effort and energy into the business or into the games. So.
What kind of trends do you see or forecast? This is an interesting one. I think the industry is shifting away from larger, very expensive board games.
Yeah,
I think we are already seeing lesser of those come out every year. I think the over deluxification of games is coming way down because I think the audience is broadening.
Yeah.
Like, I think, like, I remember this conversation I had with Nick of, Nick was trying to make this argument to me of like, well, if I sell 1,000 games at $50 or 2,000 games at $25, it's the same thing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, but at $25, you might sell 20,000 copies, right?
Yeah.
You might sell 200,000 copies.
Yeah.
Because the audience has gotten so much broader for board games, and the amount of people that are willing to buy an $80 to $90 game is just not there when the audience is that broad. Right? Like you can still make things like that, but you're selling to a more niche audience when you're doing that, and that's not sustainable, in my opinion, if you want to scale, right? And so in general, I think smaller, cheaper, more affordable games. I also think that crowdfunding is starting to wane. I don't think it's gone. I think it will continue to exist for many more years, but it's waning. It is not a sustainable model to run a company off of. Like, I think 10 years ago, you could put a game on Kickstarter, put another game on Kickstarter, put another game on Kickstarter, put another game on Kickstarter, dump a couple of extra copies of distribution. Hey, this one did pretty well. I actually need to reprint. And you could run a company like that. You cannot do that anymore. Right. Kickstarter and crowdfunding is not a viable way to run a board game publishing company. And you need to have multiple sales channels. You need to open things up. Everything's gotten more expensive. The economy has changed. Everything is different. We're dealing with tariffs. Like everything is different. And the idea that like running a game off crowdfunding has shifted dramatically. So I think that that's the thing is like bigger, more expensive like games are starting to wane, and I think crowdfunding has really like taken several steps back across all platforms. But I think crowdfunding has severely reduced the total amount of money that a publisher can make to run their company off of.
Yeah, I think to go along with that, in some sense, like you said, the audience is expanding for board games, right? There's growth in the hobby in general for how many people are into the hobby or getting in, and if you looked at the hobby a decade or more ago, there was a lot more snobbish or snobbery towards certain types of games. And lately I've been seeing, and it goes back to like the memory game thing that I mentioned, like there's more of an acceptance of like dumb fun games, of like silly, even among hobbyists, like where before that was seen as like, oh, that's only for the casual market, that's only for the Monopoly and Uno crowd. Now it's like people seem to be more accepting in our hobby of games like Trio or That's Not a Hat, or Magical Athlete, which was a very niche game before, of these like really just dumb fun games, because I think I don't know. There's more people in the hobby, and not everybody wants to go hard on a heavyweight game, but also it's just easier to get these games to the table with a wider variety of people. And I think publishers are more in tune with like, hey, there's ways to take these really dumb concepts and make them like really enjoyable and help bring emotion and excitement out of people. So that's something that, at least for Bitewing Games, we're paying attention to that trend, and we're trying to jump on it as well. That's why we have something like Bombastic, which is another dumb fun game where it's just like, it's tic-tac-toe, face down, memory with a bomb, like things like that. And it's also cheap. It's a $19 game. So I think that is going to be helpful too. But
And that's the bits.
That's the bits.
Supersized episode.
So, yeah, thank you again, everyone, for submitting your questions. We had a lot of great ones. Apologies if we didn't get to all of your questions or everybody's questions, but
there were some that were like overlap. There were also some that were like just like seemed a little like out there and ridiculous, like throwing just like weird curveballs at us.
Yeah.
And we got rid of a couple of those, and like Cold Summer was like, oh, this is really overlappy with this question. But overall, I think we tried to answer as many of them as we saw that you guys posted, and we'll probably do another Q&A probably in a couple more months when we've gotten through a couple more topics. But yeah, let us know what you'd like us to talk about.
yeah, awesome. Well, we'll see you next time.